Today, on Rise Up, what does it mean to be free? We listen to the words of the riser Abdullah Hashem Al-Sadiq on true freedom. Next, what do companions of the riser Al-Sadiq say about obedience to God and being freed of chains? Dreams and Synchronicity. Brother Mohammed Reza shares with us his experience in receiving signs and visions that enforce faith and confirm truth. Out of Darkness, special correspondent James Pollard sheds some light on the perseverance of believers in Indonesia and how the true believers respond to being suppressed. And finally, Medicine of the Mahdis, as we discuss meditation and the benefits of it. This is Rise Up.
Hello, good morning and welcome to Rise Up. I'm Alia Halal.
Good morning, welcome to Rise Up. I'm Irfan Alamgir.
And we are sitting here in front of you today hoping to bring to you some glad tidings which have taken place in this era that we're living in right now, and that is the appearance of the Savior of mankind, Abdullah Hashem Al-Sadiq. He's called the riser or the Qaim of the family of Muhammad. We are his companions and we present you his teachings, we present you the evidence that he brings forward, and also a reminder to the world at large that we are living in the end times, a time where the Savior figure is meant to appear and usher mankind into a brighter future. So that's what this morning show is about.
It really is, and it's one of the most important shows in the sense that we cover a whole diaspora of topics ranging from signs of the end times, breaking news, and its relevance in terms of the end times prophecies given to us by the prophets and messengers who have been sent to the earth, numbering over 124,000, not just to the Israelites or the Arabs, but all over the world. And we bring this sense of unity, and we call for unity on this show, and we use the gospel of the riser of the family of Muhammad and the manifesto that he wrote in order to support our arguments and to show people a very clear path to salvation. Salvation really is the Caliph of God in every age. Adam was the first Caliph appointed by God in the Quran and the Bible, and in the same fashion, a Caliph of God exists in this day and age, and he is the Ark of Salvation. And our goal is to reach him by any means necessary through contemplation on his words and the proofs that he brings. And we emphasize these on every show because we really believe that there is a huge deficiency in knowledge in this area, and it's not the fault of the people, but it is the fault of the non-working scholars of religion who are the biggest enemies of every prophet and messenger who has ever walked on this planet, and they are the people who are misguiding the masses. We are exposing them, and we are calling on the true man appointed by God to rule the earth and create the divine just state. And this is what we are calling our audience to do. If you want to participate, please pick up the phone and call us and ask us questions in areas where you feel that there is ambiguity or confusion or any other problem or issue that you have, and we can discuss it live on the show. This is supposed to be an interactive show, and without the audience participation, it really doesn't reach that full potential that it was meant to reach in terms of our goals.
Yes, do call in and discuss this with us because these are very important topics. And if you are a curious truth seeker, if you're a researcher, if you're wondering why is the world going downward so quickly and what do we do to go back up, know that there are ways that we can get together and make it better.
Yes.
And those ways are more than just spending $5 on a charity every now and then. It's about having the right principles in mind and knowing that there is a God who has a plan for mankind. He's not a God who has abandoned his people, but he has been presenting to the people the principles of true worship, the principles of monotheism, through 124,000 prophets and messengers and righteous people and saints. But what happens at the end? We find that there are those wolves in sheep's clothing who, as you put it, the non-working scholars who come in, they infiltrate, they corrupt the religion for what it is. But that doesn't take away God. That doesn't take away the truth. God is still very much present. And this is why we're so honored to be able to bring to the world that information. The fact that the riser Al-Sadiq, Abdullah Hashem, is an individual who was vouched for by previous prophets and messengers. And he's here with the final will and testament of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family. to vouch for the fact that he is in fact divinely appointed, which fascinatingly enough, we don't find any of these scholars having to prove to the people. We don't see that they have to sit there and say, oh, I'm written in this will or that will.
Yes.
All they have to do is say, I am a scholar, now believe me, which is very ironic and very backwards. We shouldn't be taking from men other than the man that God has sent to us. Otherwise, we will never be truly free.
Exactly. And this call is really a call for those courageous nonconformists who are not afraid to stand up and think for themselves. And they don't need to take their religion from the idols or the wolves in sheep's clothing, the non-working clerics, the non-working ulama of the religions in the world today who are actually the chief individuals responsible for corrupting the religions of the world. We think that the world is a dark place because of them and because of their actions. And they are doing it now, and they did it back then when the Prophet Muhammad walked on the earth with his companions, peace be upon them all, and also in the time of Jesus the Messiah, when they were the chief opposition to the Messiah when he came forward and delivered his message to the Israelites and claimed to be their savior figure. Well, now in Islamic eschatology, the Messiah has come forth, and his title is the Mahdi, the one who guides the people to the straight path. It is a straight and narrow path. It is an uphill path, and it really needs people who are breaking away from mass mentality. It really is the people who don't conform to conventional thinking, because that narrative that the masses are under is the control and illusion created by the non-working scholars, in the same way that the priests of Pharaoh conjured up these false images, which was then of course consumed by the man from God, Moses, when he threw down his staff and it ate up their falsehoods in front of their eyes. And this is what we are calling the people to. We are calling the people to the Moses of this time. And he is an inheritor of Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, and he is a uniter of the Abrahamic religions as well as the non-Abrahamic religions, where he has informed us and taught us that prophets and messengers were sent to all lands and all times as a mark of justice and mercy, which is the way by which we recognize God.
I think that it's very safe to say that everyone must agree with this, that on some level, at some point through our lives, we find ourselves to be pretty much enslaved or pretty much stuck or trapped in a system or an ideology or a social conformity, something that is not allowing us to truly spread our wings and be who we should be, or have the ability to reach enlightenment. You mentioned, Dr. Irfan, the fact that that conformity can be a huge issue when it comes to following the truth. And history has proven this. It's never been the case where a prophet or messenger would come up to the scene and society at large would say, yes, what a great idea, let's go along with this great messenger of God. It's always been the opposite, where the prophets or messengers would stand before the people and the people would rally round and say to themselves, okay, let's go against this man. And the Holy Quran is filled with examples of that nature. In fact, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family is constantly being advised by God in the Holy Quran to not despair or be discouraged by the people's reactions, because they genuinely did not want to listen to the messenger. It's only after the messenger leaves that it's easier to conform with the ideas that he presented. The same thing happened with Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
We know very well that Jesus Christ had hardly any supporters, and when he did garner a great following, they all left him, to the point that they even tried to crucify him, and even then his closest left him at that point, at the 11th hour. So we know that being conformists in society will not necessarily lead us to the truth.
Yes.
But in order to take that leap of faith, there is a price, and that price is courage and bravery and braving the unknown. But the result of it, or the fruit of it, is so sweet, and that is faith, and that is freedom. And that's something we really want to emphasize in today's episode.
Yes, Alia, we absolutely do. And speaking of being a nonconformist, we say be a nonconformist to that alliance of the tyrannical ruler and the non-working scholars. When it comes to conformity, we should only conform to God and the man appointed by God, who embodies the Spirit of God, the Ruhullah, which was breathed into Adam and has never left the face of the earth, because if it were to leave the earth, the planet would capitulate into nothingness. The only reason that there is any goodness in the world is because at every time, in every age, there has always been a man appointed by God who has the Spirit within him that teaches people right from wrong, and that really guides them in all aspects of life, not just spiritual, but political, economic, education, health, etc., etc. And there is a really interesting experiment I wanted to bring up, Ali, and I think I wanted to actually play a video of it, but because of copyright reasons, we weren't able to do that. So I'll do my best to try and describe it. So you have to imagine this scenario. It's called the Ash conformity experiment, and it's a very famous psychological experiment that has tremendous insights spiritually and otherwise. It's spelled ASCH, and if you type it into YouTube, for example, it should appear. And if you type in Ash experiment, you can see this fascinating experiment that was done, which shows how people can conform under the pressure of the masses to make decisions that they know are wrong, or even more fascinatingly, it shifts and alters people's perceptions. So how they did this is as follows. They basically had 6 people, the number doesn't really matter, but in some experiments they use 6 people, and all of the people are in on it except for one. So you have a person with a board in front of them on their side, and on the board are different sized lines. And every person along this row of people who are sitting at desks, they have to say there's a line and then other lines, and one of the other lines matches the length of the line that is on the side. And they have to say which of the lines is the most closely related in size to the line that is the control line. And they go through the people one by one, and they put this one poor subject who has no idea what's going on, and they have to decide which line A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4 matches the other line as closely as possible in size. And they put this person towards the end of the row, okay? So imagine, they go through the row and one person says, okay, it's line 1. The second one agrees with him, line 1. Now these are all people who are in on the experiment. They know, and they've been told beforehand to deliberately pick the wrong size line, to see what the person who doesn't know what's going on, to see if they will conform or not. And they go down this row and everybody says, line 2, line 2, line 2, line 2. And then it reaches the person who can clearly see line 2 is not matching, it's line 3. But he's like, is there something wrong with me? Then he goes, 2.
Wow.
And then it carries on like this, and it continues. And then they asked the people afterwards, they interview them. They said, did you actually notice something that was different? And he said, yes, I did. But if everybody else is saying it's line 1, then I just thought maybe there's something wrong with me, because I'm seeing the other line. And in order to not face that rejection from the people, to not conform, is actually a big pressure. And it actually makes people deliberately choose the answer that they know is wrong.
That is extremely, to be honest, that's very chilling.
Yes.
I mean, the fact that he would purposefully choose the wrong one just in order to be like the others.
Yeah, and the look on their face, Alia, when the video is playing, because they have cameras on these people, they're like, is that the right line?
That's fascinating.
And then they change their answer. And even more interestingly, there are other people who will see these lines all on the board, and they actually agree with the crowd as well, but when they're interviewed afterwards, they're like, no, I didn't actually see. I saw the line was what the people were saying. In other words, the pressure of the crowd actually altered the perception of the individual that was looking at the lines. So there's some people who cave into the crowd pressure, and there are other people whose perception is altered by the power of the crowd or the majority. So this was fascinating. So then what they did was this. They actually put another person adjacent to that person who is the subject, who has no idea what's going on. So now there's 2 people. And when they put the second person with that person ahead of them in the row, and they said, okay, tell us about these lines. Everybody, the people who were in on it, they were of course saying the wrong line. They were like line 1, line 1, line 1. But then it came to that person who was before him. He said, line 2. Then the person after them would say line 2 as well.
Because they had that courage now to follow suit with the first one.
Right,
like, oh wow,
exactly.
the one before him.
And this was interesting, isn't it? Because it shows that if there are two like-minded people in the row of test subjects, the perception changes, the courage changes. And this is why also in this dawah we need a certain number of people to unite upon the truth, to create that sense of community, which of course is mentioned not only in the book The Goal of the Wise, but also in the Manifesto of the Mahdi, the 3rd chapter, which is the sense of community. You put one stick down, you can break it easily. You put 2 sticks, it takes a lot more force to break it. You put 3 or 4 in a bundle and you try and break these wooden sticks, it becomes very, very difficult, even for the strongest of men, bodybuilders, etc., etc. So that was fascinating. Then something even more interesting happens, right? They continue the experiment, and this is the 3rd phase of it. What they did was they had everybody lined up. They had 6 people who were in on it, and all of them would deliberately pick the wrong line. Then they had the person sitting separately, and they would have a piece of paper, a notepad, and a pen. And they would have to see which line closely matches it. But this time, there is no pressure on the person because they are writing their answers on a notepad. Okay?
Well, are they aware of what the others are saying as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So they can hear the other people say it, but
they don't have to say it out loud.
They don't have to say it out loud. They just have to mention which line closely matches it. And on this occasion, when it comes to the person, the vast majority of them actually picked the correct line and went against the crowd. And what this shows is that when you are on that individual journey where you keep things private, where you are not under the direct scrutiny of the crowd.
Social pressure.
Exactly. And this is fascinating insight from this thing. And this is what the dawah needs. It needs people to be independent thinkers. And it needs people to go into that cave that we spoke about. You know, that cave where they can think for themselves and not be influenced by the pressure cooker that is the crowd, that has been programmed, unfortunately, by the status quo to think in specific ways in order to serve the system. We want that person, when everybody goes this direction, they are not afraid to go into the unknown. And this is actually the beginning of that hero's journey towards finding the truth, because the truth can be bitter and difficult. But when you take that bitter medicine, the mind, body, and spirit are cured. So be a non-conformist when it comes to the status quo, as you will find every single prophet and messenger, they walk to the sound of the spirit and not to the voices of the crowd. And this is something really important. And I really want everybody to check out that experiment, the Ash conformist or conformity experiment, and take these valuable insights and apply them and be courageous in walking the path that the Spirit speaks to you. If you have a soul from God and your soul is telling you something, then you can blot out all the other voices. They're not important. The Spirit of God is present in the man from God, and those with a soul can recognize him if they have the courage to do so.
I think that this, if anything, that experiment definitely proves one thing, which is that you have to have a vicegerent of God amongst you.
Yes.
If we don't have a man that God sends, and that's why we say religion is a man, right? Because if we don't have that man with God's Spirit in him, then who would we be following in the end? We're following men who are not from him. And then we end up doing what we shouldn't do, picking the wrong answers, just so that we can fit in with everyone else. But when there is that inspirational voice out there saying to the people, come to the truth, then you can pick up from that courage and move alongside him.
Yes,
so without
exactly.
that vicegerent, it wouldn't work. And that's why religion is not just a book or a ritual, it's an individual sent by God. That's beautiful. And that takes us very nicely into our next segment. We're going to see some sacred dialogues now. We're going to listen to the riser Al-Sadiq talking about a very, very critical topic. And that is, how do we actually free ourselves as human beings? What does it even mean to be free? A lot of times people hear that we say that we must obey a man. We must submit to a man. And they find that very daunting because we're quite brazen about how we say it. We say obedience is to the Caliph of God. And perhaps people hear that and say, no. What about being able to think for yourselves or choose for yourselves? And all that kind of sentiment comes up. But the irony in life right now is that there are two things in front of us. There is the transparent truth that we all must serve a master, and there is that delusional state that people try and keep themselves in, which is, I don't serve anyone, I serve myself. And that is completely untrue, because society and the world cannot allow that people run amok and free. So they do keep them enslaved. People are trapped in various kinds of shackles. But there is an entity out there that doesn't want us to be trapped, and that is God. And He's laid out a way to free us. So in this particular lecture, the Riser of Al-Sadiq discusses key points that relate to that subject, and we wanted to discuss them. Shall we go ahead to the first clip?
Yeah, let's go to the first clip.
This Holy Spirit that was not born, that was blown from God. God blew His Spirit, and it doesn't die. It's everlasting. This light that's blown into the messenger, and it goes on and on and on. The Imam of the time, who's a container for that light, the believers dealing with him are dealing with two. They're dealing with the individual, who is Adam or Muhammad or Jesus or Moses or Imam al-Mahdi or whoever the name is. And then they're dealing with the meaning or the essence or that light or that spirit that was blown into them, which is the presence of God Himself. Right? Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense, obviously.
So the Imam becomes the inheritor of the earth and all that is on it, meaning he has more of a right over all of creation. He owns them, right? If a person owns his own body, right, then Muhammad had said in his speech, and Jesus, peace be upon him, had also said in his speech that whoever loves their mother or their father more than me is not worthy of me. And Muhammad said, do I not have more of a right over you than your own selves and your own family members, right? So the right of the Imam over creation is the right of God over creation by cause of that spirit existing inside of them.
It's the one and the same, obviously.
Yeah. So what it means is what? Is that any right that God has over these creatures, now the container or the Imam has that same right over creation. Because he is now the house, the Kaaba, he is the container, he is the vessel for that spirit to communicate with creation. And we have now narrations where Muhammad and the family of Muhammad say, we are the tongue of God. And our hearts are a vessel for the will of God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not will except that we will. Meaning anything that God wants, Muhammad and his family, alayhim salam, they want. And another narration says that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not will except that first Muhammad and the family of Muhammad will. So also whatever Muhammad and the family of Muhammad will, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. Which both versions essentially mean the same. They mean that the vessel that has this light or this spirit from God in him now has totally deleted himself, and his heart has no other will except for the will of the Spirit of God, which is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So essentially now dealing with the messenger is dealing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their will is one and the same.
So here's a very interesting perspective. We find that there are two voices that are struggling to take control over the human being. One is the voice of the divine and one is the voice of the self, right? Mm-hmm. And there are so many spiritual perspectives and so many religions and religious scriptures and Gnostic teachings that have gone into the idea of the spirit and the body and the self and the good self and the bad self, or the nafs, and the soul, and there's all these different aspects and components that make up a human being. But this, and especially, I think we've mentioned this before on the show, but we definitely have to mention again, you should read the books like the Bhagavad Gita to see more about what Eastern faiths have to say about this topic, because the idea of freeing the self and coming towards the truth in the correct manner is something that the Eastern faiths were very invested in. Of course, the Abrahamic faiths as well, but the way that you find the teachings depicted in the Gita are very fascinating. And they're very necessary to know, because it's difficult to be a true monotheist if you don't know what's in control in your own heart and in your own mind. In fact, we all know this as companions of the riser, Al-Sadiq. We've all been on that incredible journey at the very onset of knowing that we need to find the truth. The first part of it was to recognize that there's something called an ego. There's something called a self. And Al-Sadiq very beautifully taught the people that were following him that there is that battle that you have to face, a battle that prophets and messengers before have mentioned. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family mentioned it when he said the greatest jihad or battle isn't against anyone else, it's against your own self. And that's something that every truth seeker needs to definitely focus on, I think, and give some importance to, because without knowing that, we cannot actually be capable of freedom or holding the burden of freedom.
Yes, exactly. Very well said, Ali. And you mentioned that narration from the Prophet Muhammad. It was in the context of people who were returning from war, basically. They were engaged in a battle against the oppressors, and they came back, and the Prophet congratulated them for taking part in what he called the lesser jihad, or the lesser struggle. And the companions were all bruised and bloody, and the clothes were ripped, and they said, "This is the lesser battle?" He said, "Yes, because the greater battle is against the nafs, the jihad al-nafs, the kind of striving against that part of your human nature, the self, which is always present. And it is a greater jihad, or a greater fight, because it is against something that is with you at all times and all places. There's no getting away from it.
You can't escape your own self.
Right, exactly. And the way Al-Sadiq describes the nafs is like this entity that is made primarily of emotions. And emotions, of course, take the intellect offline. And marrying it up with what you said about the Bhagavad Gita, it is a tremendous book of spirituality. It is a book written about the Prophet Krishna, who has been confirmed as one of the 124,000 prophets that came to this earth. And he is now also to be revered by the Muslims. Now, this is something that might be difficult for some of you, but Krishna and his disciple and successor Arjuna were prophets of God sent to the land of India, just as Abraham was sent to the land of Iraq, or Jesus to Palestine, and so on and so forth. And in this book, one of the things Al-Sadiq loves to highlight and point out is a particular painting or picture, and we all know that a picture can paint 1,000 words, in which Krishna and Arjuna are on this kind of chariot, exactly, and they have these horses, these 5 horses, and the reins of it are being held by an unawakened self, the nafs, and behind the nafs is this spirit, this thing that they've depicted in an interesting way, which is a non-physical entity, and it's very, very worried and concerned because an unawakened nafs or self is going to be led astray by these 5 horses, which have on them the 5 senses. At the front of the horses, the eye, the ear, the nose, the mouth, and so on. So you can be led astray by your senses unless the soul takes charge of the reins, and then it can steer the horses in a direction that needs to be steered. And actually, it's interesting that the soul, as part of one of its facets, is the aql, or the intellect. And the word aql in Arabic actually comes from the word niqal, which means, again, the restraints, the reins, or the rope.
Wow.
So it's got interesting parallels, even in Islamic theology, where you are using your intellect to control your emotional states in order that you may think clearly. I mean, we can all do a thought experiment here. All of us at one point in our lives have experienced anger. And of course, anger and rage completely take your ability to think clearly away from you, doesn't it? And the brain goes offline, and this emotion, this feeling of burning is actually here, right over the place where the heart is, and you can feel the blood coursing through your veins. And then, of course, you do something that you wouldn't have done had you been in a state of calmness, which, of course, is going to be a segue into the medicine of the Mahdis, because we're going to talk about this kind of emotional intelligence, which is very, very important. In fact,
Imam Ali said something, by the way, about that. He said, anger begins with madness and it ends with regret.
Exactly.
And there you go. That's
and Imam Ali says it in one sentence, whereas people write whole books about it. There's a book called...
So deep. It's such a deep concept.
It really does. It sort of crystallizes the essence of the wisdom that is in the statement. So yeah, this is something I think everybody should contemplate on, is that, you know, take from the religion of God what God's messenger gives you. So if Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, the riser of the family of Muhammad, the man mentioned explicitly by name in the will of the Prophet Muhammad, is telling us that Krishna is from the 124,000 prophets who was sent to India. And by the way, the battle, the Bhagavad Gita actually is in a battle scene.
Yes.
It is that kind of battle with the self.
Yeah.
It has an outward aspect.
It has that symbolic thing going on.
Yes, and it has so much more to it. And I think anybody who doesn't read this book is depriving themselves of knowledge that can really benefit them spiritually, and not just merely rejecting somebody because they are from the Hindu tradition, which is, of course, now we know it's been confirmed that Hinduism in its origins is actually, and most Hindus will tell you themselves, you don't have to take it from me, they will tell you that they're actually a monotheistic religion at heart. And Krishna is a man who in his time also embodied the spirit of God. And his book, the Gita, has been inspired from that same spirit that has been with the prophets and messengers that we are familiar with in the Abrahamic tradition.
So when it comes to the idea from the riser of Al-Sadiq about, in that clip that we saw, where he talks about Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, we see and we know that Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon them, are the epitome of perfection. They are the standard. They are the goal that every human being should try and reach. They are people that if we could be a tenth of what they were, then we should die happy knowing that we reached something very, very phenomenal because of how perfect they are. They are the perfect creation. And in that particular part of the lecture, Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, emphasizes a very fascinating point, which is that these individuals did something that no one else did. They found a way to dissolve themselves into God. And that is one of the key aspects to knowing how to be free. You cannot be free, or you cannot be basically mentally aware or alive enough to know God unless you do not have your own self at the forefront of your thoughts. You have to be able to rid yourselves of that self in order to allow God to take charge. And that is part and parcel of fighting the ego or fighting the nafs or all these spiritual aspects or teachings that people are going into these days and they're trying to learn more about. There is a good reason for it, but there has to be that goal in mind, which is the goal of the wise, to find the messenger of God, the vicegerent of God, and allow him to take the reins of the nafs or of the self. Muhammad and the family of Muhammad are those individuals who knew how to allow God and his light, his spirit, to enter their vessels, because they had emptied their own vessels out so beautifully, and they were now rid of those human, the nature and its darker traits that shouldn't be there, that all of us have to constantly, and this is a lifelong struggle, by the way. It's a lifelong struggle to fight that kind of sentiment or nature that we can have within us. So that is the first thing to really realize and recognize when it comes to freedom and true human enlightenment. It is the aspect of emptying the self and allowing God's spirit to reside within, which is what Muhammad and the family of Muhammad did. And that is part of that clip that we were just watching. We can go on to the next clip.
Yeah, let's go on to the next clip.
But until we reach that stage where we become one with God, just as Muhammad sallallahu alaihi was a servant to God, we as believers have to consider ourselves to be servants of the Imam of the time, because the Imam of the time We should love him more than our own parents, because within that vessel is the spirit of Allah, the spirit of the Creator. We have to acknowledge that the Imam of the time has more of a right over us than our own selves, than our own souls, than our own minds, than our own family members, because he has within him that soul, that Creator, the soul of the Creator, that spirit that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if we deal with the Imam of the time in that sense, not worshiping him because we know that Muhammad will die, Jesus will die, Moses will die and have died, and that these individuals, they were containers for the Spirit of God, but they die, and that Spirit never dies. The Spirit of God never dies. If we deal in their presence as if we are in the presence of the Creator, because we are. They say that we are the eye of God in one narration. So if they're the eye of God, that means what? That means that God is looking at us through their eyes. When the narration states it is by us that sins are forgiven, then we have to understand that the Imam, whoever sins he forgives, right? God has forgiven, because in him is the Spirit of God. So if he's angry with us, then God is angry. The very emotions, the very words, the very actions, everything that God has of powers and abilities, it's there within that vessel. The Imam has also those abilities and those rights over us. And the person who deals with the Imam with that in mind, being at that highest level of consciousness and awareness, and whose behavior around the Imam is perfected to the highest degree, that is the believer who is deserving of also attaining a spirit from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so in Jesus' time, the one who was the most like that was Simon Peter, and he became the successor after that. And in the time of Moses, it was Aaron and it was Joshua. And in the time of Muhammad, it was Ali and Fatima and Hassan and Hussein, right? So these people, and even there are examples of other believers too who received a spirit of sorts, like Salman al-Farisi and others that received that high level of elevation. And so I think that this is really important, because if a person thinks that he will get by disrespecting or disregarding the rights of the container of the Spirit of God, but through their own actions or deeds reach a state of elevation, it will never happen. In fact, their deeds will never be accepted.
So this is the thing, right? That is a principle that we have talked about a lot on the program, where we say religion is a man. We say God always sends a messenger. He always sends a vicegerent. He created Adam as a caliph in the land. But now we find that there is that, we're finding now the mechanism of how it is that we are connected to God through that imam or through that vicegerent, and how it benefits the human being to be in that relationship with God through the imam of the time. And Al-Sadiq has so beautifully laid out the principle of obedience and submission to God through the man sent by him, in order to enlighten mankind and to allow mankind to reach the next level. In fact, he says quite clearly there that it is impossible for a person to reach a higher state of enlightenment on their own. They have to have the vessel of God himself in their lives, so that they can move forward, so that they can free themselves of the shackles of what is untrue or what is false or what is disobedience to God, so that we can truly be free of polytheism or shirk, so that we can actually fulfill our role as a created being. We need the imam of the time.
We need the Imam of the time, and what I took from that particular clip, and this is the fascinating part of it, isn't it? That Al-Sadiq's words are so rich in wisdom and knowledge that people take these little things out of them from the same speech, and they can benefit from it universally. But what really hit home for me in those words of Al-Sadiq is how the moral conduct, the ethics of a believer with the proof of God, the Imam of the time, the Caliph of God, the Vicegerent of God, call it by whatever title you please. But the idea is that there is a man and the Spirit of God is within him and around him. And once you reach that understanding that if I make him upset, I have made God upset. If I have angered him, I have angered God. If I have pleased him, then God is pleased with me. If he smiles, then God is smiling at me. And if this becomes your operating framework in terms of the way that you interact with the Imam of your time, you will elevate very, very quickly spiritually, because your morals and manners around the Imam reflect the divine morals and manners. And really, this is the crucial aspect of faith, that when you see, for example, Jesus in your time, or the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them both, in your time, that you are literally in the presence of God. These are purified, sanctified individuals. They are the human walking, talking version of the Tabut al-Sakina, the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant. And this is something, and you saw how the Israelites behaved in front of the Ark of the Covenant. You know, it was absolutely sacred. And now that Ark of the Covenant has a face and a mouth by which he speaks and hands by which he gestures and moves. So that degree of attentiveness and mindfulness to every word that he says and every action that he takes, to obey him and to be completely present in his presence, is what's going to make you reach enlightenment, through knowing the Spirit of God and through melting in the veil, that which veils the Spirit of God.
It's so beautiful, to be honest. I mean, we know that the world is a place of tests and trials. We know that all around us there are voices of misguidance and chaos, darkness, confusion. People are struggling to understand where the light is or where the truth is. And God knows that. He knows that very well. And that's why he makes sure to send someone from himself who represents him. A vicegerent is someone who represents a royal entity or a king. And the King of Kings, of course, is God Almighty, who sends his vicegerent to the people. And that vicegerent now holds within him that Spirit of God that is meant to be obeyed and submitted to. How can we now say to ourselves that we would obey a king, but we don't need the vicegerent of the king to obey him? In fact, we don't even if the vicegerent was in front of us, we don't have to know him, find him, recognize him, obey him, submit to him. It's irrelevant. We just need the king. This will not work if the king himself commands obedience towards his vicegerent. And that is exactly what's been happening from the day that God decided to breathe life into Adam till now. When God said to the angels, prostrate before Adam, he said, I will blow my spirit, you prostrate, thereby you will be obeying me. This is what God's decision was. And not doing so led to being expelled from paradise for Satan or for Iblis. And if the ultimate goal of a truth seeker, of a researcher, of someone who's out there wondering to themselves, is there more to life than this? What is the greater purpose of my existence? That is it in a nutshell. The greater purpose of our existence cannot be anything better than to find out more about who God really is. Who is this creator? Who is this great being that has created the universe and is running it? Who is God? How do we answer that question without finding the man that he sends to us? And if he has sent a man and we find him and we obey him, and that's the other part of it, that's the covenant, that's the relationship, the contract, the give and take, we can receive such blessing from God, a blessing that is more than simply the food we eat, the physical food that we eat, or the house that we live in, a blessing that means to reach a great, great level of enlightenment with him. We can reach that. But the price for that is faith. It's courage. It's taking that step to eradicating the self and allowing that the Imam of the time take over. Giving the reins to him, obeying him, submitting to him, which leads to great things. it leads to amazing things, because when the person sitting in the driving seat is the Imam of the time, and you're sitting next to him in the car and you're allowing him to decide where you're going and how fast the car goes, then life can be an incredible adventure. And it is. It absolutely is. Imagine the lives of the disciples with Jesus. How fascinating must it have been to walk behind Jesus and see him walking on water, seeing him raising people from the dead. The disciples of Jesus had the most incredible adventures you can imagine. Same goes for the companions of Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family. And the same goes for the people around the riser of the family of Muhammad, Abdullah, Hashem, Al-Sadiq. It is a colorless, sad, desolate reality when you are away from the Imam of the time. And when you are with him, then it's almost like you're in a different dimension.
You're in a different dimension. And Alia, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, said that the world is like a prison for the believer. So a very apt analogy and a very specifically chosen one, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course, does not mince his words, and it really is like that. It is, we have been imprisoned in this world, we've been shackled down, we're not allowed to think freely, let alone walk and roam freely. This is the prison without the bars. This is the age that we live in. And the riser of the family of Muhammad is that person who has been sent to free us from this material prison in order to know the truth and reach our full potential. He is that expert in the prison break kind of understanding. And this is what the man from God is sent to do. He is here to give us freedom. And those who are shackled can only, no one can unshackle themselves. This is the key thing.
Great point.
Right? You need somebody to unshackle you. And this is, of course, also in the allegory of the cave mentioned by Plato, who has also been confirmed as a prophet messenger who was sent to the Greeks. And in it, again, it is that prison scenario where an enlightened being who has the Spirit of God comes and he frees these people in these chains. It's a very famous allegory, very well known. And it's that same principle, isn't it, Alia? That freedom can only be given when a man appointed by God comes to remove those chains. It is not possible to do it by yourself. We need God, and we need the man who has the Spirit of God with him.
And one final point I'd like to make before we go to the final clip of Sacred Dialogues, and that is that imagine an entity that is shackled or leashed. That being is not being treated as a human being. That being is being treated as an animal. God doesn't want us to be animalistic. He wants us to be humane. But to be a human being is much more than just having a human body. It is a much deeper concept. It is so sacred. The human being is so sacred, and there's so much sanctity to the rights of the human being. And God is the most aware of that, of course, and the most jealous over his creation. He calls the human being the ashraful makhluqat, the greatest of all creation. And for God, for the man from God, the human sanctity is extremely important. And there is nothing more humiliating or more degrading for a human being than to serve the wrong master, than to obey or prostrate to or submit to an entity that is not from God himself. This is something that you really have to contemplate over now and ask yourself, who is my master? Everyone has one. And Jesus said you cannot have two. You cannot choose God with another. So who is your master? Because all of us have one. We say our master is God. We have pledged our allegiance to him. And we invite you to do the same. Let's go to the third clip of Sacred Dialogues.
There's a verse in the Quran that says, and he, meaning God, confirms what he wills and he erases what he wills, and he has with him the mother of the book, right? That God has this ability to erase or change things. There's another verse which speaks about how there's not a single verse that we cause to be forgotten except that we replace with a better one. And when you are thinking of these verses from the Quran and you're listening to the words of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, where they're saying that it is by them that things are confirmed, or it is by them that things are deleted, then you have to understand then that they have this authority to to confirm information that people held or to change that information by their word, and it would be changed. And that could be in things such as jurisprudence or laws and things that pertain to religion. And certainly we know that there were narrations whereby Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have a whole episode on this, was given a kingdom that was greater than the kingdom of Solomon. And that was his ability to change the religion, whatever religion Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam put together. This became the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of the other prophets and messengers, the rules, the laws were dictated to them, as to where with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was able to formulate a lot of it. And the proof of this is in the Quran, where it says, and what the messenger gives you take, and what he forbids you from, then abstain, right? Because Muhammad had reached the perfection of morals and manners, and he had in him the spirit, and nothing he would say anyway would be outside of what the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. In fact, like, all of his speech became Quran. Anything that the Prophet said was now, it had the same weight as the verses of the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it could also go to mean historical events and situations, that whatever the Imam speaks, it can actually change the very fabric of space and time, and change that which people knew to be the case, by saying to a thing, be, and it becomes. Like when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was standing, and he saw a man coming from a long distance, and he wanted it to be Abu Dhar, so he said, be Abu Dhar, and then the man approached, and he was Abu Dhar. Some people could listen to this narration and think to themselves that the Prophet was just wishing, he was like, oh, be Abu Dhar, please be Abu Dhar, in that sense. Or that the Prophet was saying basically that there's a man approaching over there, he's not Abu Dhar, be Abu Dhar, because I want Abu Dhar. And because the Prophet said be, it became. Just like in the narration, the Hadith Qudsi that we mentioned earlier, where God says, obey me and you'll be like me. I'll make you like me. I say to a thing, be, and it is. And you will say, I'll make you say to a thing, be, and it shall be. Wow. And so that was an example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam changing something that wasn't. The man that was approaching wasn't, in the second interpretation, Abu Dhar. He was somebody else. But because the Prophet wanted it to be Abu Dhar, he said it, and it became. And there are yet other narrations, Ali, that say that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, if they wanted somebody, that person and everything inside of that person would love them. And if they hated somebody or didn't want somebody, then that person doesn't love them, all right? So by their will, by their desire, things happen. And other narrations state that the Imam is given the ability to command the angels, and the Imam, is given pretty much every single ability that you can think of that was given to any prophet or messenger. And it is all by means of that spirit that's inside of them, and by that simple will of God that's within them. When the Imam wants something to be, it is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had wanted it to be.
Wow. Absolutely fascinating, phenomenal. Words can't describe the greatness of what was just spoken about by the riser of the family of Muhammad, in the sense that when you devote yourself fully in servitude to God, when you become that perfect servant or slave or Abdullah, God removes all the shackles and chains from you, and He empowers you with the ability to say, and it becomes kun fayakun. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course, reached this stage through his extreme obedience to God in all things, when, of course, all Muslims know the story of the Miraj, the ascension, when the Prophet Muhammad stood before the flapping green veil and he became one with it and he merged with it. And then, of course, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, reached that certain level where he was given these divine powers by God, because he was that perfect servant. And perfect service to God and to the proof of God enables others to also acquire this ability, as, of course, Imam Ali, the Prince of the Believers, was able to dissolve perfectly in his obedience into the veil of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family. And that incident with Abu Dhar is quite fascinating, actually, in the sense that the Prophet is now exhibiting this ability that he has been given by his Lord, and he sees a man approaching on the horizon and he said, "Be Abu Dhar." And people may dismiss this, people may say whatever they wish, but we know, for example, of the observer effect in physics. And basically the theory, and I'll try and simplify it as much as I possibly can, but the idea is, and this, by the way, scares a lot of physicists when you ask them about this, because they cannot explain it. So basically there is just energy. There is just energy in the form of what we call waves. And then when an observer is looking at that energy, it becomes a particle in space-time, an electron, okay? So the double-slit experiment in physics is something you can check out as well. There's some amazing videos on YouTube that make it very simple and plain and clear for those who understand. But it basically states that there is only energy in the universe unless there is something observing it. And then that energy takes material or physical form. The wave of energy becomes matter, an electron. And therefore, the act of observation creates the material universe. So if there is this idea that somebody is observing things into a particular reality or existence, then the one who is observing and the person observing the observer takes on that same capability. And this is a fascinating insight. And this is, of course, the Prophet Muhammad was able to do all the things that he did merely by his word. You know, if you obey God supremely, ultimately, with total dedication, he endows you with this ability to say be and it is. And of course, we know the example also extends to Jesus the Messiah in the way that he was able to breathe life into inanimate objects and they became birds. So yeah, this is supreme servitude leads to supreme freedom. It is a beautiful poetic relationship with God and his nearest and dearest.
That is so fascinating. I love how you've linked the reality that we know from the teachings of Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, to actual experiments that have happened on the ground. And we can see that there is a very, very strong link between nature itself, how the universe is being run, and the reality and truth of God. And the fact that there is that very strong link, because God is ever present in the pattern of existence that is surrounding us. We cannot live in this world and not see him. He's right there. For anyone out there who loves God, who wants to find him, who wants to know him, they will see him. And they will find that he leads them to the viceroy that he has appointed in their time. In this time period, we know that from the will of Prophet Muhammad, the man that was meant to be at the forefront, gathering the people, gathering the lost sheep, gathering the flock of Imam al-Mahdi is Abdullah Hashim Al-Sadiq. And he has come here, and you have seen him now in that lecture series, in the clips that we played there. He has come and he has delivered that incredible, incredible knowledge that it is not enough to give it. We cannot give it justice by simply giving you a few sentences here or there from it. But those 5 minutes that we heard just there are so incredibly deep and so beautiful. And they are such a great example of God's mercy on us. God wants us to be aware of him, to worship him. To worship him means to know him. But we cannot know him until we give him part of that contract that we decided with him a very long time ago, which was obedience and submission. And that obedience and submission to God through his appointed vicegerent is what leads to the ultimate freedom. Because as Al-Sadiq from him his peace put it, the perfect servant deserves freedom. Al-Sadiq also says in The Goal of the Wise, he said, God is free and he loves freedom. He also revealed one of God's unknown names in that chapter. It was so beautiful. He says, and there's a little footnote on that point, he says, one of the names of God is Al-Hur, which means the free. God is the free. And he wants us to know him and recognize him. And in order to do that, we must know that we are his servants and truly adhere to that. But again, as the Qaim put it, you cannot know him and obey him if you do not know the Imam of your time. And that is why the Prophet Muhammad said, peace be upon him and his family, if you die and you do not recognize and pledge allegiance to the Imam of your time, you will die the death of ignorance. So I think the connection between all these points and all these facts is undeniable. No one can say it's not true.
And it's something we go through every day in our lives, Alia. All of us have been to school.
Yes.
And the idea is there's a teacher who is the disciplinarian who teaches us these things. We have to show up. We have to obey what the teacher is teaching us, right?
Exactly.
And when we obey what the teacher is teaching us, we then come to this final exam. And the idea of obedience to God is ultimately to reach that state of obedience where we can pass this exam and therefore move to the next level and move to the next the next stage of our educational process. So the obedience is really for yourself. You know, God does not take a great pleasure and pride in keeping people obedient to him. It is for our benefit that he wants us to progress to that stage ultimately where we are freed of all shackles and we become God-like. You know, this is what every parent wants for their child. Every parent wants their child to become better than them, and God loves us infinitely more than we love our children. So just imagine, this is the true nature of God, and it's been revealed by the riser of the family of Muhammad, and it's something amazing. And these clips, as Alia said, they're designed to whet the appetite for those who are truly thirsty for gnosis, for knowledge of God and how to reach him and how to become reflections of him in the creation and reach that rank of the true monotheist. And the true monotheist, Al-Sadiq said, is the one who recognizes the man appointed by God and focuses exclusively on him and takes only from him and submits only to him. This is what God has in store for those people who truly seek to know him, a true knowing.
Check out the full lecture on the Mahdi Has Appeared YouTube channel, and let's now go and look at what some of the believers in the Rise of Al-Sadiq have said about freedom and what it means to be free and how they were freed when they pledged their allegiance to him and what it is that they were missing out on all this time until they found him and pledged allegiance to him. We asked a few of our members what they think, and here are their answers. Let's check it out.
What it means to free yourself from your own self, if that makes sense. Learning in this call that your biggest enemy is your own self and that the one that puts chains on you is you.
Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he told us the meaning of freedom, and that is love, justice, and to be free from our own self. And that is what Al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he reminds us in that aspect.
It's doing what God wants you to do. It's not going with your desires. It's not letting your emotions take control of you. It's being free from all these things.
God is just and he loves justice. God is free and he loves freedom. And he created the human being free in a just nature. Who doesn't like to be free?
You know, being free from the systems of oppression, from the unholy leaders and the oppressive tyrants that are all in the world. Freedom is having the choice whether to follow the religion of God or not. At least you get the choice. You know, that's freedom.
We are slaves. We are slaves of this system. We are slaves from the day that we are born and until we die. And that the only way to send us free is to listen to the only one that wants humanity, that wants that this humanity end up good, and is God.
It is impossible to reach freedom and to become free under the leadership of someone who is not free. What kind of freedom it is to being worried about being judged by other people, to be worried about what do we eat or what do we wear or about our future. What kind of freedom it is that we cannot trust our families or our friends. Here, under the leadership of Al-Sadiq, Qam al-Muhammad, we are free.
We have to recognize the messenger of God, because that God that we worship that is good, He sent us a messenger, and the only way to be free is to listen to Him.
The riser of the family of Muhammad Al-Sadiq, from whom his peace, said in his manifesto that the power lies in your own hands. So I also see that freedom and the power to free ourselves and to change ourselves lies within our own hands.
Freedom to me is to love with all your heart. And the way that Al-Sadiq does that is that he shows us how far we can go with the attributes of God, how far the good aspects of a human being can be developed. So unless we meet someone like that and someone that trusts us that we can go that way, we don't really know what freedom is until we experience how far love can go.
I think that was a very beautiful, inspiring, motivating series of answers. Freedom has so many aspects to it, and everything that was touched upon is so true and so valid.
The truth shall set you free, said Jesus. And there is no greater truth than the father of truth, Al-Sadiq, the riser of the family of Muhammad. And if you wish to be free, then you need to embrace the truth and the fact that he was appointed in the will of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ by his very name. He is the first and only person in history, in Islamic history, who came forward and said, I am the Abdullah mentioned in the will. And he has now been confirmed as the riser of the family of Muhammad and the companion of Egypt, the savior in this day and age, the man who embodies the Spirit of God. Learn about him, walk to him, crawl to him, give your allegiance and obeisance to him, submit to him, and you shall find freedom.
Very well said. Very beautiful piece of advice. Check out The Goal of the Wise, which is on the website. You can check out the lecture series on the Mahdi Has Appeared YouTube channel. And you can call in and contact us, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you more about this great individual who was prophesied by all the religions, all the true religions of God. All the prophets and messengers of old knew that a time would come where this great man would appear and would free mankind from the great darkness that we are immersed in. He would take us out of there, and a new sun would be on the horizon. And that is exactly what is taking place right now. So reach the Ark of Salvation with us and come with us in this new covenant towards God as a human species. This is exactly what we need right now. And there's a brother out there that is very dear to our hearts who knows that and who lives by that and who really truly has shown that he is not just an individual who says what he believes, he acts upon it too. And that is Brother Mohammed Reza. He's one of our Persian brothers, very dear to our hearts, has had a very incredible journey in knowing the truth, in pledging his allegiance to the truth. And he had a wonderful dream. And in this dream, which he had quite a while ago, he found within himself the enforcement of faith that he was looking for. And that's part of the spiritual journey towards God. It also involves the visions that we see and the messages that we receive from the more realistic realm or the dream world. And this message that he received in his dream enabled him to have that ironclad strength in his faith towards the riser Al-Sadiq, and he wanted to share that with the world. So shall we look at Mohammed Reza's dream?
I can't wait.
Let's go ahead.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الأئمة والمهدین و سلم تسلیما. اسم من محمد رضا هست و خادم تمام انصار خدا آل المهدی. سلام و رحمت و برکت خداوند سبحانه و تعالی بر تمام انصار خدا و بر تمام مردمی که در قلب خودشون نور خدا رو حمل میکنند. یک ضرب المثل بسیار بسیار مهم ایرانی هست که میگه کار امروز رو به فردا وا مگذار. شما مدت هاست که بیننده شبکه امام مهدی ظهور کرد هستید و شما بهتر میدونید که این ندا و این دعوتی حق هست، اما فکرهای شما کمی مشغول هست و نمیذاره که متمرکز بشید و این چیز طبیعی هست و در حقیقت خود من هم در ابتدا بسیار در افکارم گم شده بودم، با اینکه میدونستم عبدالله اباصادق علیه السلام حقیقت رو میگه، اما همچنان در افکار خودم گم شده بودم و یک روز بسیار به درگاه خدا دعا کردم و در همون شب که اواخر سال 2017 میلادی بود من یک رویای بسیار مهمی رو دیدم. در رویا دیدم که در کنار پدر ابوالصادق علیه السلام قائم آل محمد عبدالله هاشم علیه السلام ایستادم و در یک مکانی بودیم و ایشون اشاره‌ای به زمین کردن و ما همونجور که ایستاده بودیم به سمت آسمان بالا رفتیم و از جو کره زمین خارج شدیم و سرعت بالا رفتن ما بسیار بیشتر شد، به طوری که بسیار سریع از کنار سیارات منظومه شمسی عبور کردیم و از منظومه شمسی خارج شدیم و سرعت ما بسیار بیشتر شد و ما از کهکشان راه شیری هم خارج شدیم. وقتی که از کهکشان راه شیری خارج شدیم تمام کهکشان‌ها مانند چراغ‌های نورانی از کنار ما عبور می‌کردند و ما همینطور به بالا و بالاتر می‌رفتیم. در یک نقطه‌ای از آسمان بیکران ابوالصادق علیه السلام اشاره‌ای کردند و ما در اونجا متوقف شدیم و با اشاره به من فهموندن که به زیر پای خودت نگاه کن. وقتی که به زیر پای خودم نگاه کردم دیدم که تمام کهکشان‌های عالم که مانند چراغ‌های نورانی بودند یک اسم رو تداعی کرده بودند و به شکل یک اسم در اومده بودند و اون اسم این بود: احمد. و من در رویا میدونستم که این اسم یعنی امام احمد الحسن علیه السلام رو تنها میشه از طریق قائم آل محمد عبدالله هاشم ابوالصادق علیه السلام پیدا کرد. یک نکته ویژه‌ای که در این خواب برای من بسیار مهم بود این بود که قبل از این که شخصیت ایشون معرفی بشه به عنوان اینکه ایشون یکی از بازگشت‌هاشون پیامبر خدا خضر علیه السلام هستند، از ابتدای رویا تا انتهای رویا تمام قلبم شهادت میداد که عبدالله ابوالصادق علیه السلام الخضر هستند و الحمدلله رب العالمین و این پایان رویای من بود. و بعد از اینکه من از خواب بیدار شدم میدونستم که حقیقت چه هست و من در همون روز شهادتین خودم رو به پدر ابوالصادق علیه السلام ارسال کردم و حمد و سپاس و ستایش تنها از آن خداست و خدا رو شکر به خاطر این دعوت مقدس و خدا رو شکر به خاطر اینکه پدر ابوالصادق علیه السلام رو پیدا کردم. از خداوند سبحان و تعالی درخواست میکنم به حق محمد و آل محمد و به حق تمام پیامبران و فرشتگان مقربش خیر و برکتی قرار بده در این شنیدن این اتفاق برای شما بینندگان عزیز که کار امروز رو به فردا و نگذارید. السلام علیکم و رحمت الله و برکاته.
That was our dear beloved brother Mohammed Reza sharing an incredible experience he had, and that dream is really very symbolic. It's very clear as well. The message in it was so direct, and he saw the riser Abdullah Hashem Al-Sadiq in it. We know from the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad that if you see someone from amongst us, then you have truly seen us in a dream.
Absolutely.
That's what happened for Mohammed Reza, and he is such a staunch supporter. We love him very dearly, and we thank him for sharing this with the world at large. And we invite you to also share with us your dreams and experiences, any visions that you have had, anything that has had some synchronicity in it, where you feel like God has given you a sign, then please call in and let us know, or email us, and we'll be sure to include your experiences right here on Rise Up. We'd be very happy to do so. It is inspiring to others to know that there is that communication between the divine and the individual. So thank you again to Mohammed Reza. And yeah, that was our dream segment.
Excellent. Yes, brother. Very pure-hearted brother. God bless you, and looking forward to meeting you soon.
So now we're going to go ahead and discuss something quite important with Brother James Pollard. He's going to be presenting to us, in light of what has happened recently in countries like Malaysia, the fact that believers out there are being persecuted for their beliefs, are being harassed, raided, imprisoned. We know that this is something that is part and parcel of being on the truth. But how do you respond to it? How do you react to it? Believers in Indonesia were very inspiring in their response to what happened and what took place in Malaysia and Afghanistan and other places around the world where our brothers and sisters are unfortunately being treated badly. There are still believers out there, however, who are very brave, very courageous, and are resilient. They continue relentlessly in spreading the dawah, spreading the truth. And we wanted to go ahead and hear what James Pollard had to say about the story and what is going on with believers around the world regarding giving the call to other people. So let's go.
Amidst the tyranny and turmoil faced by supporters of the riser of Ali Muhammad, from him his peace, Abdullah Hashem, in Malaysia and other countries across the globe, the believers of Indonesia are holding even more firm to their faith, writing that allegiance is to God on their doors. This is a time when the true faith comes to the forefront in the face of adversity. God always protects his righteous servants who adhere to his covenant and support the chosen messenger of the age. And true believers know that as such, even in great calamities, goodness remains only with God. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Truly, in an age when the world has slipped under a dark satanic spell of delusion and distrust for her fellow man, such a stance is critical as it gives hope and comfort to others willing to stand the test of time and still have hope in their hearts. Today, Indonesia, a nation of some 13,000 islands, reflecting the all-encompassing universal call of this age, is linking people from diverse faiths, from animism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity and Muslim backgrounds. It is only this divine call that promises to join them together as one under the banner of the riser of truth. After so many years of distrust and disunity that has led to much bloodshed between sects, incited by deviant religious teachings and political tyrants. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, made this abundantly clear to humanity that the riser comes to restore the true original religion of Islam. It is likewise only the riser, Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, who has revealed that all the messengers that brought these faiths to the world are actually from the same original true religion of God, hence a message of unification. O humanity, indeed we have created you from a male and a female and made you into peoples and tribes so you may get to know one another. Likewise, as Indonesia is the largest Muslim majority nation, with 13% of the world's Muslims professing faith in Islam, it is indeed now a time when God is testing to see if they are truly Muslims. Are they submitting to his will or the will of the self-proclaimed tyrannical rulers? Are they truly accepting the seventh and final covenant with his messenger of this age, Al-Sadiq, from his peace, who is mentioned in the Holy Will and Last Testament of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? As he said himself, a time of patience will come to people in which adhering to one's religion is like grasping a hot coal. Southeast Asia And predominantly Indonesia is surrounded by a ring of fire which causes massive volcanic eruptions and earthquakes to happen unexpectedly, spewing out hot coals in all directions. In an environment like this, even on a mundane level, the character and resolve of the people is greatly tested, and the precariousness of this fleeting life is highlighted in adherence with the teachings of the Goal of the Wise. Hence, even sustaining one's livelihood is not guaranteed. Yet on simple observation, it is clear so many of the people are courageous and resolute to find and support the path of truth. The spirit of revolution rises up like a ferment whenever the oppression reaches a high enough magnitude, and the people overthrow tyrannical regimes without fear of reprisals. A history of colonial oppression from at least the 1600s led to the Dutch monopolizing the spice trade and squeezing the wealth out of the nation, whilst in tandem oppressing and subduing generations of the people, employing Japanese mercenaries to brutalize any discontent. This led to genocide, stealing foodstuffs, mass detention and extreme torture, burning villages to the ground. More shockingly, such violence re-emerged and was repeated during World War II by these Dutch colonizers. Independence from colonial rule, as with most global nations, was only ever a smokescreen for more tyranny and oppression by puppet, megalomaniacal leaders, the next worse than the other. The Suharto regime was one of the most brutal. During his coup alone, it led to an estimated massacre of 500,000 people. Sexual violence was rampant, with countless women raped or kept as sex slaves. Hundreds of thousands of people were imprisoned without trial. Many spent years in jail, suffering regular torture. Under his regime, there was mass censorship and oppression of anyone who did not toe the state line. A nation of some 200 million people controlled by an elite of 200, with millions starving and dying unnecessarily every day. Today, with the diplomatic ties and the massive financial backing of Saudi Arabia and its own brand of extremist proselytizing, it has led to a massive spike and rise in virulent religious intolerance, in addition to the commonplace harassment of Christian groups and the show trial of Ahok, its most prominent Christian politician. Indonesia is also now a country where there is a national anti-Shia league, a mobs of vigilantes to strike fear into those who are determined to stand apart from this tyranny and seek a path to the one true God and the messenger of our age. Indonesian Salafi clerics frequently cite Saudi non-working scholars in their rulings and lead a nation of people astray. Follow what God has revealed. They reply, no, we only follow what we found our forefathers practicing. Would they still do so, even if their forefathers had absolutely no understanding or guidance? From the 1970s onwards, there has been a massive shift towards uprisings, predominantly fomented by the mass student demonstrations of Jakarta and Bandung to denounce this tyranny. Due to the abject fear of the government regime in the power of the brave souls joining together, they introduced the Mallory Law, which prohibited any political activity inside the universities. In the last few decades, despite hundreds of killings, undeterred, the revolutionists have made more outspoken and more movements, leading to housewives, bus drivers, street singers and people from all walks of life to take to the streets and say enough is enough to the tyrants and oppressors across Indonesia and beyond. There shall not come a time upon you except that the one after it is worse. Fundamentally, this is a clear prophecy today, highlighting we are indeed in the end of times. And in order for the masses of discontent to truly rise up from the ashes of these movements, it is now essential the good people band together and lend a hand to support the only man who can truly restore this jewel of a nation. And that is indeed the riser of the family of Muhammad. The remnant of God has been sent in our age to lead us out of the dark ages. And the remnant of God is better for you if you are believers. Imam Jafar Sadiq, peace be upon him, said, our riser will gain the upper hand through his personality, and he will be helped by God. The earth will contract for him, and he will reveal all her treasures at his disposal. God will make his religion triumph over all other religions at his hands, even though the polytheists may be adverse to it. His empire will extend from east to west, and will civilize all the destroyed nations. So the fundamental point remains: there can be and there will be no change for Indonesia from this suffering, disease and poverty unless we band together from all walks of life to support the riser of the family of Muhammad, peace be upon him, today. And all of these prophecies are being fulfilled. And it is a testament to the truth today that in all nations people are hearing the message of the Mahdi from their own sitting rooms in their own languages. The constancy of the faith of the band of brothers and sisters and Ansar in Indonesia who are stoic to support the advocacy of God's supremacy in this age is a critical aspect in this change. They are supporting the call irrespective of the risk and declaring their full faith and constancy, setting a marker for other lovers of God and truth to follow. They are actively sharing and spreading the Mahdi's manifesto in their native tongue for the Indonesian nation to wake up to the reality that the Mahdi has indeed appeared, as anticipated in this apocalyptic age, to offer salvation to the people. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, had said, the signs of the hour will emerge in quick succession, one after another, just like the beads of a necklace.
That was our brother James Pollard. Thank you so much, brother James, for highlighting those very important critical points for the viewers. And we're here right now at AROPL Studios to discuss a very important topic with a very important sister, and that is our beloved sister, Veronica Al-Mahdi. How are you, Veronica?
Very good. Very happy to be here with you guys. Really.
Very happy to have you on, Veronica.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You guys might remember Veronica from our meditation segments, where she comes in and takes us through guided meditation and shows us how it is that we should be basically meditating. And we have her here today because we're going to be doing, I think it's an interesting, two worlds are colliding here.
We're collaborating.
We're talking now about medicine of the
theoretical
Mahdis
and practical combined.
and meditation. So I'm just going to take a step back and listen to you guys explain to us how meditation works for the human body and what it does. And let's do it. Let's talk about it.
Okay, I think
so. I'll kick things off and then we'll get a discussion going. Hopefully it'll be fruitful and beneficial to our audience. So I wanted to do meditation as a medicine of the Mahdi segment, actually. And the reason I wanted to do it is because there are so many studies now. I mean, I've lost count of them, and so many large studies and powerful studies that indicate towards the health benefits of meditation. Now, meditation, of course, essentially at its heart is a means by which to reach single-pointed attention. The vehicle could be a mantra, it could be observing your own breath, it could be mindfulness, it could be counting down from 100 to 1. There are many different ways to reach that one-pointed focus. And then what happens is your brain waves change. So when you apply these electrodes to the brain, you'll see most people operating on what we call the beta waves, which is where we go about our everyday lives and tasks and work and so on and so forth. And then when you go into that meditative practice, that state of relaxation and calmness, where you just slow everything down and that turbulence reaches an inner calmness, that inner peace that so many people seek but few find, your brain waves shift from beta to alpha. And when that happens, some very interesting physiological changes take place within the brain and the body. Your stress hormone levels go down significantly, your pulse reduces, your blood pressure reduces, your cognitive abilities increase, your ability to retain information, to distinguish between and discern between different information that is reaching your brain. Your ability to do complex tasks increases. And there are many, many more benefits to it. We've even proven that those who practice, for example, on a regular basis, transcendental meditation, they can actually reduce their blood cholesterol levels, which is absolutely staggering, because we know that statins are being given out like Smarties by most doctors in terms of reducing the Western diet's high cholesterol levels, the negative types of cholesterol that can cause clotting in the blood vessels and other problems with the circulation. We've seen results on par with SSRIs in terms of elevating mood and feelings of well-being through the act of meditation. So it is really a holistic approach to improving one's health. But it also serves many spiritual purposes. And This is something I wanted to talk about today. By the way, I will attach to this video and maybe the segment specifically for the medicine of the Mahdis for those who are interested in reading about the effects of meditation on the brain and body so that they can go deeper into it and satisfy that intellectual curiosity that we often have, that when we see things, it's human nature, in studies that show measurable differences through modalities like functional MRI scans of the brain, where they show increase, for example, in the grey matter in parts of the brain that are associated with learning and memory, like the hippocampus, for example, then we tend to, this motivates us, right, to practice more and more. So I will definitely put a list of these studies in for those who are interested, but essentially meditation is that magic bullet for a lot of health issues. And we know in the West and actually in most of the world, stress is a major cause for pathology, for disease and illness. It actually triggers a lot of things. And we've even seen people with inflammatory skin conditions through the practice of meditation requiring much less use of steroid creams when they go through these breakups of, for example, breakouts of psoriasis, which are really well associated with stress and high stress levels. It can improve the quality of your sleep, and the list is going on and on and on. And if I was to continue, I would never get the chance to bring anyone in on this conversation.
It's a lot to talk about.
I was really excited when I heard Sister Veronica was coming on, because I watched all of her kind of guided meditations. She's extremely gifted and talented in propounding the benefits of meditation, and she puts theory into practice, which is what many doctors don't tend to do, right? So
you said it.
I said it. It came from a horse's mouth. So I think I really wanted to get into the aspect of practicing meditation and to hear about your story and how you came to be this expert meditator who practices consistently, and the benefits that you've personally experienced through establishing this practice in your life.
Okay, so basically, yes, it's true. I was very inspired by the story of Buddha. And that set me off in a journey of leaving everything behind and find truth, whichever that was, right? So then I find myself in a kind of a monastery, it's not Buddhist, but yeah, you could say like a meditation monastery.
Like a retreat?
It was a retreat, but like you could stay there and leave. Actually, I was invited to stay with them and leave.
Oh, so you had like a teacher, like
I did go for a retreat. I just like made up my mind and left my life behind. I had very little money. I jumped the whole way from Chile. I was living in Chile at that time to Portugal to a 7 days retreat, and after that I would get like almost zero money, and let's see what happens, God, right? So then I went to this retreat, and they really they saw that in my heart I really had nothing else. I really left everything outwardly and inwardly. So then they invited me to stay and live with them, which was very rare, because even if people would have the money to stay with them, they sometimes would say no, you know. So I stayed with them and lived with them for almost a year. So it was not a retreat any longer. It was just staying there and practicing and getting better at the practice. And but to make to condense the whole story, because I know we don't have, it's a very beautiful long story, but to condense it, I think what was lacking in a way, it was the practical part, which is not sitting and meditating, which that it had, of course, but it's like how to deal. For example, if I go to now, we have the Imam Mahdi, right? We have Al-Sadiq, we have the Qaim of the family of Muhammad, and we're gonna be, we are seeing what's happening with our brothers out there. We see the persecution, we see the reactions of people not really being welcoming all the time. Sometimes we have very positive reactions, sometimes we don't. And we're gonna be encountering things where we're gonna have high levels of stress, high levels of challenge, because God cannot take the best that we have inside ourselves unless it takes us to a process. Like, for example, we have a stone, we have to strike the gold. First you have to break it, then you have to put it through water, then you have to, I don't know the name in English, but it's really, you break it again until it's like almost sand, then you have to burn it until it's all completely melted, and then from this stone you get this much of gold, right? So this is kind of the process that God takes us through, because He sees that in us, right?
Yes.
And so this practical aspect of it, to to be able to let God do that with you, or to be able to be a good companion, a good supporter of the whole journey, and to be as the people that you admire, right? Al-Sadiq, the Imams and the Mahdis, you require a tool that actually would help you through it, right? Of course, number one, faith and thinking good is the same thing, and this is what Al-Sadiq alayhi salam has taught us. But having control of your hands is super important, because otherwise you could hurt others and you can hurt yourself, right? Having control of your body is the same thing. So having control of our minds and thoughts has the same impact and would have the same repercussions if we don't really tackle that. And
very well said.
Yeah, and really meditation is one of those tools that I would say, and my husband also was there in this retreat, and he would always say something that I really took as well. Meditation is not only for those 5-10 minutes, half an hour, 3 hours if you're really good at it, when you sit down, but it's a practice that you have to continuously do on your awakened normal life, right? It's a vigilance that you have to...
The God-wariness, being aware, being conscious.
Exactly, yes.
Man arafa rabbahu faqad... No, man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabba. Those who know themselves know
their
God.
Lord.
Right? This is the essential aspect of wisdom, because, and it's very interesting to unpack this statement, isn't it? Because when you are observing your thoughts and your emotions, you are actually witnessing that part of yourself that is different from the spiritual aspect of yourself.
Absolutely.
That part of yourself that interacts and engages with people, that can say harmful stuff, that could hurt somebody's feelings, that could react in an impulsive way, that then you later suffer from the consequences of those actions, and so on and so forth. One of the things, Veronica, that I really, when I looked at from a self-awareness point of view, meditation, you always have this thing, don't you? Living as human beings in the world that we live in, we have stimulus and response, right? Somebody says something that provokes us. We feel the emotion of anger, then we react, sometimes to our detriment, most of the times to our detriment and theirs.
Yes.
And meditation really introduces this gap between stimulus and response, so that you can choose the most appropriate response rather than react in a way that is impulsive and you will live to regret, like Imam Ali said in that famous narration. And meditation actually, if it's practiced consistently, will help you to widen that gap more and more until you can then pick an action that is appropriate to that situation. And this is actually wisdom, is it not?
Absolutely. I think that is very, even if you're looking for a result on an issue, or you want to prepare a show or whatever that is, what do? You do a search. You do a search and you look, you go to a library and you look what is it needed, and then you take the most, that what you need, what it applies better to the situation, and then you use it. So I guess this is exactly what you're saying, and I think it's very, very well put. The thing of having a gap is extremely, extremely, extremely important. And as I was sitting here, actually came this example of, in our Spanish show, we really emphasize, and I think is what we are doing here, in emphasizing in which is that voice in the whole of these billion people talking and having opinions about things, including ourselves, that we need to follow. How to recognize that voice that we actually need to listen to, that is inspired by God, that would lead us in our actions into safety, and everybody around is going to be safe, and we have guaranteed that whatever happens in the butterfly effect is going to go good because I listen to that one voice that is inspired by God, right? So how do I identify that outside? This is what we're doing. How do you tune
into the divine frequency, right?
But that's what we're doing here. We're telling people, hey, that one voice is always here in humanity. We need to find it, right? So as without, so within, and inside we have 1,000 million voices talking about different things, having different opinions, because sometimes we can be very adamant about something. Next day we change it, next second we can change it. So which voice was us? When we were 13, we had certain opinions, very fixed, strong opinions about things, that we changed it at 20, then at 25, 30, 40, 45, right? So which one of those were I, So apparently I is very... is changing. It's not so reliable. It's not so... There has to be an unchanging point of view where change is perceived, right? So that's I would call it like in our dawah, you know, as we have the voice of Father and we listen and when we are at peace because we know He's the voice in all, like we can have many different opinions, but we just go to that voice and we know we're going to be good, we're going to be fine. So the same in within, right? So if we quiet all this noise and all these voices, all these different opinions and reactions and interactions within and without and all this judgment and all these things are, you know, all of that out. And then we just make space. And here is the difference. We need to make space to that voice.
Be recipient to it.
Exactly. What is Al-Sadiq? He has cleaned himself so much that his will, his own personal will, is no longer there. Those voices have zero power in him, and God saw him as a very trustable recipient for his will to be preserved and to be, you know, defended and to be expressed in the most clean way so that everybody can benefit, right? So this is what we need to also as well try to be. Empty ourselves, turn off all those billions of voices that are outside talking, they're inside, let's just turn them off, not relying I so much because we already proven that change is a lot, and then we just keep quiet and just follow that one voice that fortunately we already have, is Al-Sadiq. So what does it mean? The will of God, we already have it, we know what He wants, you know. So we have a great advantage.
Yes.
You know? We don't even have
so
to guess.
beautifully said.
It really is. And does it not bring in the best and highest form of meditation? Because we say if meditation is single-pointed focus, and we talked about the different vehicles to reach it through the breath or through a mantra or whatever, but the idea is that whatever you focus on, you grow nearer. Yeah. So if you're focusing on a man who embodies the Spirit of God, then you're growing closer to God. And this is the way to God, right? Yeah. And people often wonder, how can they see more of these miraculous things where Al-Sadiq sometimes he says something that stuns you because you were thinking about it the other day. Yeah. It really does ring that spiritual bell, and it helps you identify your own soul's whispers that come in the midst of what's going on. And this is a crucial thing, that when you focus, and by the way, this is the main revelation that Krishna gives to Arjuna. He says there are many types of meditation, but don't try and meditate on that unknown essence of God, because if you do that, it will lead you to confusion. And then he invites Arjuna to meditate on him as the door to the city of knowledge.
The vessel holding that spirit was him. So he was the focal point for Arjuna, and that's what Krishna taught him, and that's what we find the riser speaking about as well. And we discussed that exact theme today, and everything we've said today has reached this this point where we're at now, where we are explaining what you're saying, Veronica. Don't listen to all those voices that confuse and distract. Find the right voice, and then once you find it, you always listen to it. You have to. You have to fully embrace the obedience towards that one voice. And that voice has to be the voice of God's Spirit on earth that has to be in a vessel. Not an arbitrary thought process or something that you heard somewhere or a dream, but a man who's been appointed by name, who's been vouched for, who's been officiated clearly in a document. Once you find that man with that voice, you're good to go. There's nothing more left to do after that, is there?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Like,
that's all you have to do.
That's all you have to do. And by the way, we talked about the Hajj, and the Hajj is really a spiritual migration, and we proved it, and it's been proven over and over again, that the Hajj is actually to the man appointed by God who embodies His Spirit. Now, there is a turning point in Hajj, and the Holy Prophet Muhammad actually revealed the true wisdom, and when that turning point in Hajj happens, when he said the words, Hajj is Arafah. And Arafah is knowing. And what happens in Arafah, where then at this point you turn and you go back to the Kaaba and re-swear your allegiance? Well, in Arafah, what you have to do is stand up basically from dawn to when the sun goes down, and you're actually engaged in self-analysis. And if meditation is not self-analysis and self-observation, and then removing those defects of character and those impurities from yourself, through self-appraisal, you then return back to God. And then your allegiance is a true allegiance, and your recognition is a true recognition. And this is the goal of the wise. The goal of the wise is to identify the man who embodies the Spirit and to reach him through contemplation. And meditation is a very, very powerful tool on that journey.
I think that we've reached the end of our program for today, but we are extremely grateful to you, Veronica, for coming in here.
I am super happy to be with you guys. I know I love you very much.
We have to do this again, Veronica.
We have to. I feel like you...
There's so much more to talk about.
She put the cherry on the cake really today.
She
really did. You really tied it all up with a beautiful ribbon. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, guys.
I hope that the viewers take that advice very seriously. Take a step back from life, breathe in, think to yourself, what am I doing? And meditate over your journey, which is extremely, extremely important. And you are the only one who can make it on your own journey. As we said earlier, don't worry about mainstream ideas and conformity. Look for God himself and he will reach out to you if you reach out to him. Thank you for tuning in today. We'll be seeing you again tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock UK time. So make sure you tune in. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.